have approval of agenda. Supervisor Massler, did you move? Yes. Supervisor Augustine, second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approval of May 9th minutes. Supervisor Haskey, second. Supervisor Poppy, any discussion on those minutes? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Public comment. Anybody wish to speak? Are there any crickets in the back or any mice, hiding somewhere? I guess not. All right, nobody wants to talk to us tonight. Let's go to why we're here then. Approval of administrator position request, hiring of full-time corporation counsel with the sad departure of Mr. Wisnicki to the judgeship. We have a vacancy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I had explained at last month's meeting, that yes, with Judge-elect Wisnicki about to take his position probably around June 1, the county does need to look for a corporation counsel position. Previously, that was or currently is a half-time position. Historically, the reason that it's been half-time is because for the most part, the workload levels only require a half-time corporation counsel position. But the difficulty is then trying to fill a half-time corporation counsel position. Historically, the reason why it worked is when Mr. Wisnicki was hired back in 2007 as half-time corporation counsel. As half-time corporation counsel, you were eligible to receive both retirement and health benefits. And therefore, he was able to have both the half-time corp counsel position and the half-time assistant district attorney position and get those benefits that he needed. Now, since 2013, state law has required that you have to have closer to a 0.6 FTE to be eligible for state retirement. And for us, you have to have from federal law at least 30 hours a month to 30 hours a week to be eligible to have health insurance provided to you. That has made it very difficult, therefore, to recruit an attorney that is willing to work at what would be a reduced wage from a county standpoint. The sheet that I gave in front of you shows the first column, which is the current financial situation, which is that we pay our corporation counsel $50.08, and then the health, dental, state, federal retirement, and the workers' comp. If you put that all together, that would be $148.5. If you divided that by 2, because it's a half-time position, that would be $74,256. If we then go to the third and fourth columns, which would be if we were to contract, because I have not been able to find a single attorney that is willing to give up their book of business, because the other part about this is if you're an attorney and you now work for the county, you now have access to court records and documents that would create a conflict of interest if you were to still be having clients, especially in the family law area, divorces, custody battles, child termination of parental rights, things like that. So you'd have attorneys that would have to give up a book of their business and at a lower rate than what they currently usually charge now. And talking with some folks, if you looked at, and we know that the city of Kewaunee currently contracts with their attorney for $200 an hour. So if you did $200 an hour and you did that as a half-time position, 200 times 1,040 hours comes out to $208,000. Actually, 200 is more on the low end than on the high end. So what my suggestion, or what my proposal would be, is that we hire a full-time corporation counsel at step 8, which is $48.99. I'm just going to call it for simplicity $49 an hour, of which, because they're full-time, we can give them health benefits, retirement, and workers' comp. That comes out to $145,900 or $146,000. The question or the concern may be, well, Mr. Administrator, what are we going to do with that extra half time that from a workload standpoint? I am confident that we will be able to find additional work for the Corporation Council, either from some local governments within Kewaunee County, or I know in talking with county administrators in other counties that they're looking for attorneys that would be willing to do TPRs and 5150s and other human services work, which is what our Corporation Council predominantly does now for the county. And so I am confident that we would be able to contract out a portion of that time. And so therefore we would be able to recoup some of those costs. If there's questions, I'll try to answer them.
Supervisor Mastelier.
Your mic, please.
Have we talked to the city of Kewaunee? Because I understand that they have released their attorney.
I have been approached, but
You mean
I
to
am,
hire him?
Hmm?
You mean we want to pick him up?
no.
No. This city of Kewaunee got rid of their attorney.
Right.
So
And I would,
I have not had talks with the city of Kewaunee or the city of Algoma. Both have expressed there's some interest. The reason why I haven't approached any of them for any of discussion is because at least for right now, I didn't want to do a bait and switch and say, okay, I'm guaranteeing that we'll hire this, that the city of Kewaunee will hire this person. And that may not be what we want to do at the outset. Am I confident that we'll be able to contract out for some of our Corporation Council's time? Yes, but I have not had official discussions with the city of Kewaunee.
Supervisor Augustine.
I think contracting out the hours would make great sense here. Do we have any idea what, could we get $200 an hour contract out for this guy? You know, if we look at Mr. Wisnicki's, the salary is 75 grand, we're gonna net about, it's gonna cost us about 75 grand. And if we
Do I think
hours,
that we could bill out for 200? I doubt that we could bill out for 200, but I do believe that we could bill out for a higher rate than what we're currently paying him. And so in that respect, I believe we can do some of that. It all depends on the discussions, whether that would be with, let's say, whether it's the city of Kewaunee, it could be Brown County, it could be Door County. I know that Door County is still in searching for corporation, I think an assistant corporation counsel with them. I know that Brown County is looking for some corporation counsel work in their human services department. I know in my weekly Zoom call with other administrators, they're looking for that type of attorney help. And with a lot of this, it doesn't have to be on site, because a lot of what the courts are doing now is remote hearings and remote work. So a lot of that work can be done remotely. And then if something needs to be done, it can be done via Zoom or some other some standpoint.
So you're going to be very clear though with whoever we hire that that's the way it's going to work. And how are you going to calculate that? I mean, the total hours. I mean, obviously this person, I assume, is not going to, you know, work only so many hours.
I look at it this way, and this is where I don't want to, I'm reluctant to be super precise right at the outset. And the reason why is that Mr. Wisnicki had been doing this work since 2007. So with the new person, they'll need some time to kind of get their sea legs underneath them. So could they be putting in more hours than the half time than what was first envisioned? Yes. But as that starts to happen, do I believe that then we can be contracting out some of those services with other counties or other local governments? Yes, I do. I don't want to be too definite or black and white right now, because again, I don't want to be saying one thing and then it be another, and then have the thought is that I'm trying to deceive.
Other questions? Supervisor Yonke.
do you have any candidates yet?
I've had conversation with two candidates, and I believe that if this goes through, that I have a tacit agreement to move forward with the package that you see in front of you.
Supervisor Lukes.
So in the past, Mr. Wisnicki did corporation counsel and half-time assistant district attorney.
Correct.
before going-
So
Why
No.
not do that again?
why not do that again?
This is, and honestly, Supervisor Lukes, that's an excellent question. And talking with the district attorney, if you had a brand new person coming in as a assistant district attorney, their hourly rate would be $27.20. There's going to be no, and my conversations, there's no attorney that I'm aware of that would take a half-time county position of which they can't get state retirement and they can't get health benefits, and then have a and let's even say we paid them $50 an hour, and then a half-time ADA position where they're making $27 an hour and get no state retirement nor health benefits. So they get very low level wages and no health benefits or benefits whatsoever. It's just not attractive.
Attorneys get big money. That's why I ask about the. Well, I'll tell you what, you offer me this and
They're rich in heaven.
50 bucks an hour seems, I will say that seems cheap for an attorney, but I guess I've always been on the, the other end of it, so. You go in and get basic legal services, and boy, they
Correct.
charge quite an hourly rate. Supervisor Romden.
As when Jeff was doing, did he do 1,040 hours of work every year?
If you were to ask him what he would say is, yes, roughly about 1,040 hours. If he was like half ADA and half corporation counsel, there'd be some weeks that he was doing more corporation counsel because there was more work that needed to be done on the human services side, or there was some more resolutions that needed to be done. And then there are other times that he had cases in the DA's office where he needed to put that time in. But predominantly it was pretty much a 50-50 split.
All right, other questions? Supervisor Haskey.
Okay, well, I just want to mention that the city of Algoma just hired a new administrator for more money than what we're offering an attorney.
Really?
And the
Where do they get
two,
all that cash in
Yeah,
Algoma?
I'd
and
like to know.
they're advertising out for somebody in the public works and the parks. And they're closer to what you're offering here for those two
I mean,
jobs.
the
So
total, they're offering for public works and so forth, they're offering $102,000 salary.
the guy that's the administrator now we offered him 103 something and some odd dollars, but 103 is what he got offered.
Well,
And he was already making 88 something as his job. And then they agreed to bring somebody up to do that job plus benefits. So, when that's hitting the paper, the same time we have these three jobs and then attorneys looking at it, they're going to wonder what the heck's going on.
well, it makes me glad
Yeah,
I don't,
yeah.
makes me think they need to take a closer look at things in Algoma. My
I
God,
agree.
where are they? It's not that big a town.
They
Is
think
that
that
even, what's
All the
population?
taxpayers have an ultimate checkbook in Algoma now.
Oh.
They can just,
Well, we can't keep up with the big wages in Algoma.
Yeah, but we hired a guy from Kewaunee to do the job, just so you know.
Yeah. Well, that's administrator, of course, but I still, boy, I
Administrators are fine people. I just want everyone to be aware.
administrator for a town that size though, at that way.
A city.
City,
city.
well, I don't care if it's a city, town, village or burg or whatever. I mean, it's still got about what, 2,800 population?
100.
3,100. Well, I guess it's the extra 300 maybe gets it there. Anyway, other discussion? Supervisor Yasi.
I motion we go ahead with the proposed full-time corp counsel.
Supervisor Yaki, got a second?
I'll second it.
Supervisor Maskalier, is there further discussion? Supervisor Robin?
Scott, with your motion, are you using this, the proposed pay schedule at 48.99 an hour?
Yes, that should be step 8.
And then
Yeah, I was going with the proposed full-time corp counsel that
Did you say, so you said.
Pro- the proposed, yes.
I just want to make sure.
can I just ask then for that, because Jeff did a little bit with the human services, is that any of that gonna fall on to that or not?
With the corporation council, there were, corporation council for the county does, I'll call it 3 main jobs. And the majority of a corporation council's time for the county, at least in Kewaunee County, is human services work. That's the majority of their time.
Okay.
Second would be what I would call the county board work, the resolutions and those types of things. And then the third is the odds and ends of if there's spills or the like, then we do some of that where the county will bring some type of citation there, or if there's some type of contract that needs to be drafted, or if there's any type of legal opinion that needs to be done. But predominantly, the work being done is in human services.
So then all of that will be filled. We won't need to look for anybody else for any other, correct?
Correct,
And then still contracting out possibly if we could.
correct.
Supervisor Pop, you have a question?
We're still gonna be hiring a human service director, though, correct?
Correct.
All right, so that's not what Kim asked.
Wasn't it?
No, we will be hiring a full-time corporation counsel.
Then I
We'll also
misunderstood.
be-
Thank you, Gary.
We'll also be hiring.
Then I'm sorry, I misunderstood Supervisor Kroll. I thought you were saying from a legal standpoint, was the work that the attorney doing human services work? Yes, they're doing human services work, but they will not be the human services director. We will go back to what it was before, which was that we had a corporation counsel and then we had a human services director. We had the good fortune that Mr. Wisnicki, because of his years with Kewaunee County, was familiar with the Human Services Department. And so there was an opportunity to combine those 2 positions and save the county some short-term savings. But now with him moving on, we will have a corporation counsel, and then we will have separately a human services director. I apologize. I misunderstood the question.
So get
Thank
ready
you,
for those
Supervisor
tax
Poppy.
bills.
I know we're sitting on a motion, but with that human services, is there a way we can idolize somebody in that department to where they would be able to take that job on and just maybe change their pay salary a little bit to, instead of hiring a full-time?
My suggestion is that would not be the right. Could we? Sure, we could. That would not be my recommendation at all. We have 4 unit managers each that each have their own unit and responsibility to do. I believe that the Human Services Department needs a director to oversee that department.
The thing that gets tricky about human services for those that haven't been on the board quite as long. Yeah, it's a lot of money to get a human services director, no question about it. When I came on the board, whenever it was, human services had a deficit of about 1.1 million.
1.2.
1.2 million. So while a human services director is almost, or is probably as ridiculously expensive as a corporation counsel and all of these things, $1.2 million deficits because things aren't getting processed correctly in the department, you can pay for quite a few directors. Supervisor, oh, sorry.
It's about getting the right person. And what we have been able to do, and again, we've been able to take that $1.2 million deficit, and at the end of 2021, that will be an $800,000 surplus. But you're talking about a department of roughly 30 people with 4 units and a variety of different programs within those units that have various different levels of state and federal regulation. It is my feeling and belief that a director is needed to oversee that department.
Well, my point is that in order to save a little bit, or maybe it's even quite a bit up front, we want to be very careful that we don't go back to the days of running a $1.2 million deficit, because that was a significant burden to the county. We were very fortunate when Wisnicky was able to do both, and I would argue did better than when we had full-time directors down there. He really got things working extremely efficiently down there. But unfortunately, some of you went and, voted for him for judge. And, there you go.
We had,
Yes, Supervisor Lukes.
we had, after, I forget, the gentleman that retired after many years,
Bob Matthijs,
Bob Matthijs, we did hire somebody for a short time. and
Yes, we certainly
Dana
did.
Johnson,
That didn't work out.
correct? And
He
then
wasn't correcting the problems.
I don't believe he was, which is why when he resigned, I took over for a year.
Right.
And so from the year 2020, we did the deficit from a deficit of 1.3 million to a deficit of 300. So that was a $900,000 surplus under my watch. And then from there with Mr. Wisnicky, it went from 300 to an $800,000 surplus. So 1.1 million on his watch. So we've been able to turn the ship around rather quickly. And I am absolutely committed that this path is the path that will continue.
I'm not happy about having to hire a full-time corporation counsel or a full-time human services director, but on the human services director, I remember all too well, 1.2, $1.3 million deficits. That we can't go back to that in corporation counsel. Well, I mean, that's kind of what keeps us legal and clean and, keeps me out of jail, and, I can't go there. Yes.
Okay, I have to make a comment on that though. When I
Not in
started,
this jail.
when I started on the human services and we weren't even getting financial statements, we went and hired an accountant that would make sure that when we were billing, we were doing all the overhead costs, the true costs, not just the wage. And we brought in the guy to do the books, and that's when things started turning around. So it's not just different directors. I think putting an accountant in there, that's what his responsibility was, to make sure the billing got done for the right amount.
I think who we choose as a director and how that department is run, my point is that has an extremely significant impact upon county finances. So, you go back to the way things were, well, director could look pretty cheap. Anyway.
My other question was where the money, I mean, we didn't budget for this obviously last year in our budget, so we would take it out of the general fund to finish out the year.
Well, we got a tree out back.
We're not sure yet. Why? Because we're not sure how at least from the human services standpoint, we'll see how the human services budget turns out. As for the corporation council, again, we'll see closer to the end of the year because, okay, they're starting, they'll start June 1. Well, depending on if and when we could start contracting out some of those hours, that could therefore reduce that shortfall. The shortfall, at least for right now, let's call it about 50K. So is that something? Yeah. And sometimes those things happen. But again, that's why we have general fund balances. So,
And it may end up being for this year. You may have to look at it as $50,000 in on-the-job training because we may not be able to bill out this year as he learns the position. Supervisor Ramden.
What kind of experience are you going to look for? Because I'm hoping we're going to find somebody that has some government law experience.
what I'm looking for is an attorney, again, since predominantly most of their work is human services work. So I want someone that has strength in family law, and I think I have one.
What about general county law?
Again, some of that gets learned over time.
Any other discussion? Additional questions? All right. Seeing none, you have a motion before you.
One more
Oh,
question.
Supervisor Romden.
What is the
certainly.
process going to be in recruiting this person?
Again, this is a this is a department head. So by statutory law, what happens is the county administrator then provides a recommendation as to an appointment for the department, of which then goes through this committee and then goes to the county board for approval.
Other questions?
Are we going to be able to see his resume or her resume or whatever?
I'm
qualifications
leery
or-
about that, Supervisor Romden. Because again, if this committee is going to want to then get into the candidate selection and recruitment process, that is not the job of this committee. Because if you're going to do it for this position, then what prevents you from doing it for a child support specialist position or a case manager position or a highway worker position or a deputy position? That is the responsibility of administration.
I understand that, but I'd like to know who I'm going to be approving.
I can provide who it is and a resume, sure.
Supervisor Haskell?
Yes, do you have a rate in mind that if I go back to City of Algoma and say we would like? to
I do
use
not.
You do,
My
okay,
goodness, after what we heard you're paying administrators, that rate's gonna be.
yeah. Because, if we know we can turn around and rent them out for 1/3 of the time, it would make a big difference on this,
Yeah,
so,
well, we're figuring that's
know.
where the big money's at.
yeah.
Kidding. Sort of. All right. Other discussion. All right, you have a motion before you. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next meeting is set for June 13th, 6 o'clock. Need to keep that meeting to 1 hour and 10 minutes, otherwise Supervisor Poppy will have to finish it out, but we'll have no problems with that. What's that? Okay, Supervisor Rhonda will not be able to be here. Supervisor Augustine?
I have a question about something that came up at the Land and Water meeting.
Okay.
I know there's other committees that have general public put on them.
Mhm.
It was brought up that somebody wants general public put on the Land and Water Committee. I voiced my opinion that I had no interest of that happening. And then the state statute read that is up to the county board to appoint somebody to that position if they feel they need it. So does this go to the administrator? Does this go to the chair,
No,
the
it goes
county
to me.
chairman?
Those would go to me.
In fact, I would go one step further, Supervisor Augustine. I would believe, and I can check with Corporation Counsel, is that something like that would have been set by the county board rules.
Hmm.
And the county board rules did not state that there would be a public member as part of the Land and Water Committee, and that was approved by the county board. So therefore, could the county board amend the county board rules? They could possibly, I believe so, but typically what happens is county board rules are made at the organizational meeting, which determines what the makeup is of standing committees and any other commissions and commissions and groups. And therefore, I would find it unlikely that the county board would wanting to be changing the county board rules.
I would not bring it, I mean, I was going to say, I would not bring it forward as in me. I would not bring it forward unless there was a specific request from that committee.
Correct, and
Unless-
that's what I thought, but then they were saying it's state statute, but I think Mr. Feld, you're right, if the county rules.
Correct. The
and it's not
statutes,
in there.
the statutes say, I'm gonna assume, and I haven't looked at it, but I'm gonna assume the word may was in there.
Correct. yes.
May means
Yeah.
you have the choice. And if the county board has made the choice that a public member will not be a member of the Land and Water Committee, then a public member will not be a member of the Land and Water Committee. So, because that is the authority of the board as a whole, and the appointment, if an appointment were to take place, would be brought forth, I believe, by me because it's a non-county board
Yeah.
member, but would still have to have the approval of the county board.
So
Correct,
to
and
get on
that's
the
like the human
agenda-
services and stuff like that. There's community members, and that was the question, is how did they get put on there? Was that
Still-
from the chairman or?
Well, if
from,
it's a public member, it would be the administrator, but and
Correct.
it would have to be approved by the county board, and it would have to go on the agenda, and it's not going to go on the agenda by me unless it's requested by the committee.
I believe that there are certain statutes that require certain public members to be on. And
Right.
so in that respect, it's a shall, not a may. And in that respect, again, if they're public members, and just as a historical standpoint, public members to any committee are appointed by the administrator. There is a little bit of disagreement as to the Board of Health, whether the entire Board of Health is supposed to be appointed by the county administrator. I come from the belief that any county board supervisor to any committee, as in their capacity as a county board supervisor, is to be appointed by the county board chair. And again, when I talk about appointed, that still means that any of those appointments must be approved by the board.
Just ask then, because that was brought
Sure.
up, how on our health committee did those three ladies
Get
on?
appointed.
Yes, because they've been there for many years.
They had expressed interest. I then asked if they are still wanting to serve. They say, yes, I reappoint them.
And as for county board agendas, I don't bring anything forward on the agenda as far as specific resolutions or requests or whatever, unless it has come through a committee.
correct, but I think that was their way around the committee where it said the county board shall appoint a member from the public,
Right.
or may,
Right.
sorry.
May.
May.
So,
So I think that, because I voiced my opinion that I had no interest in
So-
doing that. So I think that was their way of trying.
so, and I
There you
will
go.
say it this way from a standpoint is that if, and I'm just using it as the example. If the board chair wanted to place something, because the board chair is in charge of the agenda, and this is a philosophical as to how a chair wants to operate. If a county board chair wanted to place something on a county board agenda, that is his or her authority to place something on an agenda, on a county board agenda, regardless of whether it is through a committee or otherwise. But many county board chairs follow a process where things do not go on a county board agenda until they have gone through the committee process and have been vetted through a committee prior to coming to a county board agenda.
Exactly. Otherwise, and that's just a good process. I mean, everything should go through a committee. The committees do the work and they give the input that ultimately goes to the board to bring things to the board that haven't gone through a committee. I've not done it. I know Chairman Widener, I don't believe he did either. And I believe that is a process that has served the county board very well. I have no intentions of changing it. I like it. All right. Anything else? All right. Motion to adjourn. Supervisor Luke, second by Supervisor Mastelier. All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
At 6:33. Yes, both the June and July are slated to be in Luxembourg to accommodate any public attendance. I will be.
shown interest. I don't know how much. We didn't tell
Right. I'm gonna quick do this.
Scott, I'm gonna turn this in. Scott.
Yep.
Just shoulder.
All right,
Add
thank
to
you.
the File, I gave mine too.